Assalamu alaikum. Today we are going to start with chapter 8, which is business ethics and corporate social responsibility. You will see a lot of abbreviations, CSR, which means corporate social responsibility, in between. So that means corporate social responsibility. We are going to know what is the meaning of business ethics and corporate social responsibility, what is the meaning of them, and how they are linked to each other. Business ethics levels, what do you mean by that? The ethical stance, what do you mean by ethical stance? Four possible ethical stance, possible ethical stance that goes in the market, and we should focus on them. We'll talk about it in detail later on. Corporate social responsibility, what is that? Whom it's affecting, or looking at what exactly? Role of corporate social responsibility management. We are going to discuss that management part. Examples of social responsible behavior, socially responsible behavior. We'll talk about 2 or 3 examples there. The relationship between corporate social responsibility and competitive advantage. Like this one, as I mentioned, the last one, you will see between brackets CSR, which means corporate social responsibility. Here, business ethics and corporate social responsibility. Business ethics and corporate social responsibility is meant what? Standards and conducts of organization in dealing within the organization and with its external environment. What is that? It refers to the standards and conducts of organization in using in dealing. Let me again. Sorry for that. This refers to the standards and conducts any organization is using in dealing within the organization and also dealing with external environment. So it focuses on internal and external practices of that organization. Business ethics. When we say macro level, it means in wider level there are issues about the role of a business in national and international organization of society. So it's focusing on national and international organization of society. In that it focuses on the role plus offering or offer issues and other issues related to the international relationship, especially when you as an organization is dealing or working on an international scale. Means focusing here, as I underline that, important issues of international relationships and the role of the business in an international scale, in a wider scale. Also, we can say in the second part, with this macro frame, corporate social responsibility is concerned with. In this we can say, as dealing internationally, social responsibilities of those organizations has to obey all obligations through regulations and corporate governance. Yes, this is what we meant. Knowing how various requirements of different stakeholders will be resolved. Yes, this is the idea of that. And the last one is saying even at individual level, business ethics will pay attention to the behavior and actions of each employee in the organization. If you want me to explain the second one, I'll go to the second part again within this macro framework. This means, let me just focus and give you the idea. This means, again, dealing internationally. That means social responsibilities of that or particular organization or any organization. Social responsibilities has to obey all obligations, all rules through the regulations and corporate governance, knowing how various requirements of different stakeholders will be resolved. يعني you have responsibility in that and you have the ability to resolve all the stakeholders requirements. I think it's clear. And conflicting needs of different stakeholders will be resolved. Yes, this is the idea. When we say ethical stance, what do we mean by the ethical stance? In the ethical stance, we mean the ethical position, we can say, or it can be said that the ethical attitude or ethical carriage. Let me say it to you in Arabic because I want you to get the idea of ethical stance. Here we mean الموقف الأخلاقي للمنظمة or للorganization. So ethical stance is one of the most important thing should be put into the strategies, into the plans of any organization. This part is looking at the or discussing the ethics stance which is attitude, we said, or its behavior, to which extent an organization is dealing ethically in its practices, how it's dealing with either socially or in as religious point of religious point or behavioral issues or behavioral practices, how it's dealing in its business. So ethical part is very important here. Different organizations take different stance, and there is likely to be a strong relationship between ethical stance, the character of an organization, and how strategy is managed. Means every organization has its ethical stance or ethical position or ethical attitude, and it has a very strong relationship between the ethical stance. Any ethical part, you are dealing either with employees or with your practices or with your behavior or with the external practice, all those are linked with each other. There is a kind of relationship between this, showing your main behavior, your main attitude that dealing with. This shows the character of any organization and also showing how strategy is managed in this way. So ethical stance, the idea here are shaping, we can say shaping the practices of any organization, which will form your name as an organization, and your reputation also is important as a business in the market. So ethical stance, one of the most important thing you should take care of. You should put it in your plans and you should put it in your practices when you are dealing in the market. Why? Because this will shape your reputation as a business in the market. The reputation is one of the most important things that you need to take care of. We'll see later in coming stages why that reputation is important. This diagram, 4 possible ethical stance. Ethical موقف الأخلاقي for organization is focusing on 4 ethical stance. Short-term interest of stakeholders, to which extent they are ethical in those practices as organization to satisfy their stakeholders. Long-term financial benefits to the stakeholders, how you can gain that through the ethical stance, and stakeholders' interest and expectations. Also, one of the most important things that might affect your ethical stance, or through that you can get a good ethical practices which might form later on your reputation. And the last one, shaping society. We are going to talk about all those 4 points in detail. The coming slides will explain them in detail. So those are the 4 important elements or 4 important possible ethical stance that organizations are focusing on when they are dealing with their stakeholders, when they are dealing with others in the market, when they are dealing internally or externally. I'll talk about them later on, each of them in the coming 2 slides. The 4 possible ethical stance. As we said in number 1, short-term interest of stakeholders. Of stakeholders, right? Short-term interest of stakeholders. What do you mean by that? For short interest of stakeholders. What do you mean by this? Short-term interest of stakeholders. Look at the red, where I highlighted them in red. Look at them. Focuses on responsibilities of the business in short-term interest of stakeholders. In the case of the organization, in this case, the organization will achieve only minimum obligations. Where the organization is able to achieve only the minimum obligations. Why? Because it's a short-term interest. The main focus on the interest of those people at a short period of time. This shows a single focus on short-term interest of stakeholders. As long run is not either main concern here. The long term focus is not a very important in this part as a short term interest. The main focus here is satisfying the interest of stakeholders, trying to cover their obligation, but they will be able to cover the minimum obligations. Why? Because it's a very short term interest of stakeholders. And the second one here was saying long-term financial benefits to the stakeholders. Now, long-term financial benefits. Long-term financial benefits. Financial benefits, one of the most important thing for organization to achieve. Financial benefits should be, here the idea here means is increasing over time. So this requires well-managed relationship with other stakeholders, to which extent the relationship is good, and this can be seen or justified, as they are saying here, justified through the organizational action or organization actions. Okay, this is in the long term. Again, we are talking about the long term obligations or the long term financial interests. What is that? This represents the organization reputation. If you have a good reputation in the market through your ethical practices, you will gain this financial benefits over time and time. Your benefits, your interest will increase because you have good reputation in the market, and this is what you are looking for. The financial benefits comes from that point, the ethical stance. Which is built through long existence and practices and relationship of this organization or your organization in the market. This is important for long-term financial success. One of the most important thing here. There should be also, there should be evidence, as we said. What kind of evidence that will help financial benefits? Your reputation as an organization in the market, and the market for the financial success. Let me say, we can say, for example, when customers keep coming to your business or to your shop or to your organization, even their younger generation, this means what? You have good reputation, which will reflect positively on your financial benefits, and vice versa can work as well. If bad reputation, negative reputation, you will not get that financial benefits, and it will affect your reputation. Me as a buyer, I'm not going to come, and also my generations, they will learn from me. My coming young generations, they will learn from me, and they won't come. So it can be something of two sides. The positive thing is your ethical stance, the good ethical practices to get the financial benefits in a long term. I think this one is clear, and we talked about a lot, so I think more than clear. So number 3, let me go to the design, to the diagram. Stakeholders' interest and expectation, and the last one, shaping society. So stakeholders' interests and expectation. what the stakeholders are wanting or are looking for, and what they expect from you as an organization. Interest and expectation of stakeholders should be taken into consideration in the organization's purposes and strategies. One of the most important thing when you are putting purposes, objectives, and strategies, you should not forget the interest and expectations of your stakeholders. They are the main thing for you as an organization. This should be done beyond or farther than the obligations and corporate governance or regulations. This should be done beyond those two things, beyond your minimum obligations and the obligations of regulation and corporate governance. Means what? Means you should pay attention to those two, interest and expectation of those stakeholders, even if you are as a minimum beyond what do you mean by beyond the or farther than the obligations of regulations or corporate governance, because it's very important to take care of your stakeholders. These stakeholders will argue that the performance of the organization should be measured. This is the second part. I will just make it shorter because it looks like theoretical things, and let me make it easier for you. In this case, they said what this stakeholder. Okay, the stakeholders will argue that the performance of any organization, or let me keep saying the performance of your organization should be measured in detailed numerical way. Numbers, detailed numbers, financial thing, for clarifying that for them, rather than accepting the minimum financial information. So what do they want? Looking for detailed financial measurements, and it's their right, part of their right. Anyway, there are important and difficult issues of balancing between the interest of different stakeholders, which is sometimes this is normal in any kind of business. It is difficult to satisfy all the stakeholders. It's difficult to satisfy the stakeholders individually. So you are required to show them very detailed numerical statements, good measurements to satisfy them, even though you might come across many who will find difficult to satisfy individually, which is normal. And the last one of that diagram is saying what? Shaping society. The last one is shaping society. Where is it? Shaping society. This is slide number 8, shaping society. Maybe I mixed or I forget something. Shaping society. I jumped to there. Stakeholders, interest, expectation. There is one which is not here. I didn't mention it. I don't know how I took it out from this, or it's there, but I cannot see it. Bottom line of stakeholders. I don't know how that part is. Okay, maybe it's not here. Maybe when I was preparing or I was writing, I removed it from here or by mistake. But you have a part, look at your slides of this chapter, slide 8, saying shaping society. After the diagram, slide 8 says shaping society, which means ethical stance in any organization depends on many practices in the organization, such as the rules, regulations, relationship, corporate governance, accountability of the organization, transparency. All those things are combined together, which shape the your relationship with the society. and whatever affect ethical stands either positively or negatively that will shape your relationship with the society. Because all those things, as we said here, as they said here, regulation, corporate governance, accountability, which means responsibilities, liabilities, or transparency also. And whatever affects ethical stance, your relation with that society will shape your relationship with that society. How do you deal with those people? It will shape your relationship with the society. I'm sorry for that. I just dropped that part from this slide. I don't know how. Maybe when I was preparing, I deleted that by mistake. But to have it on slide 8. I think it's clear, right? Let us move to to slide number 9, which is corporate social responsibility. Is concerned with the way in which an organization exceeds the minimum obligations to stakeholders specified through regulation and corporate governance. It also will enable the organization to follow a balance between 1, 2, 3. The idea of the first part is saying what? Corporate social responsibility is concerned to which extent an organization exceeds its obligation, especially by implementing regulations and corporate social governance. To which extent the organization is exceeding the limit of minimum obligation. That means doing very well, offering you more than that. So that will enable you to work in the society. The companies to follow a balance between, if you will be able to exceed the minimum requirements, this requires you as a company to balance between number one, between your firm responsibility to your responsibility as a firm to stakeholders. This is as your role or your responsibilities, your economical responsibility to stakeholders. I think this is clear. We talked about a lot. The legal responsibility to comply with laws of the countries where it operates. That means to which extent the legal responsibility to comply, that means to fulfill the rules and regulations for your business in that countries that where you operate. This is when you are working in an international, overseas, in international context, to which limit you are following rules, regulations, customs of that country. This was part of your social responsibility and ethical stance linked to that. And the last one also is easy. Your ethical responsibility to obey the society's norm. That means your social or your ethical responsibility to accept or tolerate the standards or the rules or the customs of that country. Now we are expanding a little bit. We are coming to the limit of international, how we are increasing our relation, or increasing also our responsibility, increasing our ethical stance. This diagram is not that difficult. You might see those words, some of them for the first time: plan, do, check, act. Actually, they are not new. These 4 words: corporate social responsibility management, how you can manage your corporate social responsibility. Those 4 terms are related. We discussed them a lot earlier. Those 4 are focusing on how to manage the corporate social responsibilities. We used other words long time ago. We used other words rather than do, act, check. But the idea is not new. Let us go over them and see. At the planning stage, when you are trying to create your corporate social responsibilities at the planning stage. Stage management is one of the most important thing. How you will manage your planning, do, check, and act. Look at the arrows, how they are moving in the same direction. One after each, one is done, then the second part, then so it goes in circle. It goes in circle. Let us start with them. At the planning stage, what is required is two. What is required is two. When you are planning your business work, number one, you are required at planning stage, consult stakeholders. Take their opinion, see what they want, what do they exactly in their mind, what can shape that organization according to what they are saying, then you will be working. Establish code of conduct. What do you mean by that? To know the limit of dealing with each other according to the established codes. Knowing your limit as an organization. There is code of conduct, how to deal with those people. Set targets. According to the clarification of 1 and 2, you will put your targets, you will put your clear objectives, you will put your clear aim to what you want to reach by a certain time. If you remember this, we talked about a lot. Then, once I'm ready with this, I move to the second part, which is do, which is a kind of implementation, if you remember. Implementation, as you are aware of this word. Establish a system to manage the employees. Establish management system and personnel. The idea here is establish a system to manage the employees in that organization. Promote code compliance. What do you mean by that? Support or encourage practices of following law, rules, or regulations. Promote code compliance. That means you have to establish or support encouraging practices of following laws or following certain rules or following the regulations of that organization. How can I do that? How can I promote this kind of codes? How can I do that? As top people or management level, as top people, start with yourself. Start with yourself implementing laws, rules, regulation, and give this impression to the employees to do so. If you want them to follow what you put on paper on your strategies, be as a good model for your employees. This case, it will be perfectly going. Otherwise, don't say something and you are not doing it. As employees, they are not going to follow, or even if they follow, you might be struggling with that later on. You might be struggling with that later on. Okay, check, as we said earlier, monitor or follow. It's a part of checking. Monitor or follow. Check the extent of progress. Audit is a kind of monitoring or checking the performance accuracy. It's a kind of audit is following the performance accuracy. So it's part of evaluation. It's a part of monitoring how you do your work. Whatever is the performance at that period, report. Reporting the situation to higher management is a part of checking. As I'm doing my job, so checking here means what? Monitor or following. And part of reporting is part of monitoring or following or checking if you want. Even if you change the words, doesn't matter. So the part is part of checking. So this part is required to know also as a kind of evaluation to the situation in the organization. So it's also when you are reporting, you are evaluating how it's going. So it's a part of evaluating the situation in the organization. So I planned, I implemented, I checked, followed, and write my reports, went to the higher people, then act. What do you mean by act? Action taken after evaluation. This is the idea of that. Action taken after evaluation. Corrective action or reform of a system or reform of systems. So either improving action are taken if the situation requires. If something is going on, something wrong is going on, that means I have to take improving action. Changing the management, changing the system, changing parts of that, diversing part of that role, whatever requires. So correction needs to take place. If the system also reform of systems means if the system requires reforming, then should be reformed or modified if it is strongly affecting the situation. And the management of corporate social responsibilities goes or follows the same practices again if required. That means the process will go again and again. Means again from planning to do to check to act. And the circle is repeated whenever required. Either if you have a new plan, a new project, or the same thing need to be followed up again. This what should we be doing all over the time. So slide number 11. Yes, the business case for this is printing mistakes. The business case for social responsible behavior. Social responsible behavior. So focusing on the situation of business based on the social responsible behavior. What kind of behavior is responsible to form this social context? Here are 3 important points. Generating internal benefits, reduce risk of reputation damage incident. Number 3, work in best interest of shareholders. All those 3 points are very important to shape or to see the social responsible behavior. How to do that? Sorry. Number 1, generate internal benefits. If you want to have a greater or higher benefits internally, that means what? Enhance recruitment of qualified employees. Now looking internally, if I want good reputation, good behavioral practices, I should recruit the high qualified employees to avoid problems, to be qualified enough to get good focus, good behavior, and so on. Number 2, increase retention of employees. What do you mean by that? Increase keeping or holding or retaining your employees. Don't fire the employees. Don't kick out the good employees. Increase keeping, holding the good employees in that organization. This is one of the best internal benefits, as they have experience, as they are well qualified, so they will train in newcomers. So a lot of benefits is one from that point. Number 2, if you want to have good social responsible behavior, reduce risk of reputation damage incident. What do you mean by that? If you want to have good reputation in the market, reduce the risk that might damage your reputation or your situation, or reduce the accidents or incidents or events that might damage your reputation in the market. If something will damage your name in the market, for example, you have some latecomers, if they have appointment with employees, the employees will be waiting for them, it will damage your name. Don't go to that place, they are always late. Or if you have a salesman who is always short-tempered, he cannot stand people, so it will give a bad reputation. So try to reduce all those risks, all those kind of things that might affect your name in the market. And they give you example of that. Avoid criticism from consumer groups and may lead to increase buyer patronage. So what means by that? That might increase buyer patronage, which means what? We can say, try to satisfy your customers, try to satisfy your consumer group, satisfy them, because your name, your reputation depends on those people, because this will increase buyer support, which means what? Don't give a chance to criticize you as a business. If they are satisfied, this will increase number of buyers, as reputation is part of the business, and we talked about that earlier. The third one is what? Works in best interest of stakeholders. Preempts costly legal and regulatory actions. That means what? That means try to do find or follow legal and regulations actions, even if they are expensive. Sometimes you are buying consultant, therefore they are saying expensive. Therefore they say it might cost you a lot. So try to be ahead in those implementing or buying those legal regulatory actions or regulations to be part of interest of stakeholders, works in best of stakeholders. You are up to date. You are up to date for them. I think this is the last point. Yes, okay. So let me repeat the last one for you. If you want to work in the best interest of stakeholders, to do so, this requires legal and regulatory actions, which is expensive or costly, but you are in need of that to maintain your name, to maintain your position in the market. And the last slide is talking about the relationship between corporate social responsibility and competitive advantage. If we ask you what is the relationship between corporate social responsibility and competitive advantage, what can you say in that? According to the most empirical studies, most of the experimental studies or researches, they support the idea that firms can do very well financially through good corporate social responsibility. Most of the studies, they prove that if you want to have good financial things, this can be done through your corporate social responsibility, your responsibility to the society, your obligations, the implementations, also ethical issues or ethical stands as part of that. While other researches are found that a reversed relationship. How? Excellent financial performance of any organization will allow the firm to engage or to be involved or to participate in corporate social responsibility. What do you mean by that? This will increase the buyer's trust. They are saying the same thing, but in reversed way. Let us see how. And the last one is saying, finally, we can say the relationship between corporate social responsibility and financial performance is always should be a positive relationship. If you have good corporate social responsibility, good name in the market, good reputation, this comes from your good practices, comes from your ethical standards or ethical stance, this will lead to good financial performance. So they said that the relationship is always should be positive. If it is not clear it's not clear that most of them are true or not. It's not clear for them that if corporate social responsibility or financial performance comes first, which one of them is leading to the other one. Is corporate social responsibility will lead to good financial performance, or good financial performance will lead to good social responsibility? This is the second part of this slide, is saying that which one comes first. Anyway, they are strongly linked. Either this connected to each other. Either this one comes first, corporate social responsibility, or financial performance, they are linked to each other. This will lead to that one. Either if you do it vice versa, or you go backward, vice versa or backward. Both of them are linked to each other. We came to the end of the chapter. There is a part also I want to tell you in the coming chapter. There is a part that also talks about ethics. There's a part talks about business ethics in more details. Also, we'll talk about examples of unethical behavioral examples for businesses. And also we'll talk about how to manage behavior of staffs in organization. So there are 3 important points related to this idea of corporate social responsibility and ethical stance in the coming chapter. But after talking about business and many other things, then we'll link it to stakeholders analysis as part of ethical things. That is the end. That is the end for today. And see you next week with chapter 9.